She stood quietly backstage, clutching her violin case a little too tightly. The hum of the crowd drifted in from the auditorium. Voices filled with excitement, chatter about the performers, and the usual buzz of a big event. She was only a small figure amid the crowd of adults and older teens, most of whom were seasoned players with years of experience. The girl looked no older than 12, dressed plainly with her hair pulled back, her face calm but with a hint of nervousness in her eyes. No one paid much attention to her. When the event organizers called out her name as one of the contestants, a wave of quiet surprise passed through the audience. Some whispered to their neighbors, "A kid? Are you serious?" And a few chuckled softly. It was clear they didn't expect much from such a young player. This music festival was an important event in their town. It wasn't just a friendly gathering. It was a chance for musicians to show their skill and maybe get noticed by professionals. The stage had seen many incredible performances over the years, people who had trained for decades, winning prizes and scholarships. In comparison, this little girl looked out of place. She had come a long way to be here, but no one knew the story behind her quiet presence. This wasn't just a hobby or a passing interest. Music was everything to her. Her violin wasn't new or fancy, but it had a special place in her heart. Her mother had played the violin too. Long ago, before the girl could even walk properly, her mother would sit by the window with her instrument, filling their small home with music. The girl had learned to hold the violin almost as soon as she could reach for it, and her mother taught her notes and melodies with gentle patience. But 2 years ago, everything changed. Her mother had gotten sick, very sick. The music stopped then. The house became quiet. The girl didn't want to speak much after that. She was sad and confused, and sometimes the weight of loss felt too heavy for her small shoulders. Her father did his best to keep things going. He worked long hours at 2 different jobs to make sure they could live comfortably. He saw how his daughter kept her violin close even when she didn't talk much. One evening, after hearing her quietly play in their living room, he made a decision. He found out about the music festival and signed her up. Not because he expected her to win, but because he believed in her. He thought maybe this stage could help her find some light again. Now, as she waited behind the curtain, her fingers traced the smooth wood of her violin. She remembered the lessons, the songs her mother loved to play, the feeling of the bow gliding over the strings. Her heart beat faster. What would happen when she went out there? Would anyone listen? Would they care? The sounds from the audience grew louder. Applause filled the air after the previous performer finished. She could hear the whispers again. Some people were joking, calling her the little girl with the old violin. Others shook their heads, saying it was a waste of time to let someone so young compete here. But she didn't let those words reach her mind. Instead, she closed her eyes for a moment and thought about what the music meant to her. It was not about winning or proving anything to the crowd. It was about feeling something deeper inside, something her words could never explain. When the host finally called her name, she took a deep breath, lifted her violin case, and walked onto the stage. The bright lights made her blink a little, and the audience came into view. Rows and rows of people, many with raised eyebrows and doubtful looks. But she held her head high and went to the center. She stood still for a moment, her violin resting against her shoulder, and waited for the first note. The quiet in the room was heavy, as if everyone was holding their breath, expecting to hear something disappointing. The bow touched the strings gently. A soft sound emerged, delicate and uncertain at first, but then it grew stronger, clearer, filled with feeling. She played a song that her mother had composed but never performed in public. Each note carried memories, love, and sadness. It was like she was telling the audience her story without saying a word. People in the crowd stopped talking. Some leaned forward in their seats. A few even closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them. The laughter and whispers from before were gone, replaced by a silence full of respect. As the music filled the hall, the doubts and jokes melted away. The girl wasn't just playing notes, she was sharing a piece of her soul. And in that moment, everyone listened. 2 years ago, before the quiet settled in the small house, music was everywhere. The girl's mother was a woman with a gentle smile and hands that seemed to dance when she played the violin. She wasn't famous, but she was known in their community for her talent and kindness. People would come to listen, often bringing friends and family to hear her play at small gatherings. The girl grew up surrounded by melodies. Her earliest memories were of sitting on her mother's lap, the soft sounds of the violin filling the room like a warm blanket. Sometimes she would watch her mother's fingers move with such grace that it seemed like magic. By the time she was 4, she had a small violin of her own, a simple instrument but perfect for her tiny hands. Her mother was patient and kind, teaching her notes and songs with a smile. The girl loved to play, not because she wanted to be the best, but because it made her feel close to her mother, like they shared a secret language. Life was happy then, simple and full of music. But it didn't last. One morning, the mother woke up feeling very weak. She brushed it off at first, thinking it was just a cold, but days passed and she became sicker. The visits to doctors began, and soon the house was filled with the sound of worried voices and quiet crying. The girl didn't understand what was happening. She noticed her mother spending less time with the violin and more time resting in bed. The warm music that once filled their home grew quieter and finally stopped. Her father tried to hold everything together. He cooked meals, cleaned the house, and did his best to comfort his daughter. But sometimes, after he left for work, the house was silent except for the slow ticking of the clock and the soft rustling of leaves outside the window. The girl stopped speaking much. She didn't cry loudly or throw tantrums. Instead, she kept to herself, holding her violin close like a small treasure. She would sit for hours in the corner of the living room, gently drawing the bow across the strings, playing tiny notes that sounded like whispers. Her father noticed. He saw how the music seemed to be the only thing keeping her connected to the world. One evening, after hearing her play quietly, he sat beside her and said, "Maybe it's time to share your music again. People might want to hear what you have inside." The girl wasn't sure. The idea of standing in front of people scared her. She wasn't like the other children who performed confidently, but her father believed in her, and slowly she agreed. They found out about the music festival happening in their town. It was a big event, with lots of experienced musicians coming from all over. Her father signed her up even though he knew it would be hard for her. The days leading up to the festival were full of practice. The girl spent hours playing the piece her mother had composed years ago. It was a beautiful, gentle song full of hope and sorrow. Her father listened quietly, sometimes wiping tears from his eyes. As the festival day approached, the girl felt a mixture of fear and excitement. She wanted to honor her mother's memory, but worried about how the crowd would react. Would they understand? Would they care? On the morning of the festival, her father helped her get ready. He gently brushed her hair and reminded her to breathe. "Just play from your heart," he said. "That's all that matters." When they arrived at the venue, the girl was surprised by how many people were there. The auditorium was large and filled with rows of seats. She saw other musicians warming up, some with fancy instruments and confident smiles. Backstage, the girl felt small and nervous. She sat quietly, tuning her violin and watching the other performers. Some were laughing and talking loudly, while others practiced silently. She thought about her mother and the music that had brought her here. She thought about the story she wanted to tell through her playing. When her name was called, the girl took a deep breath and stepped onto the stage. The bright lights made her blink, and the crowd looked bigger than she had imagined. At first, there was silence. Then the first note rang out from her violin. It was soft and fragile, but full of emotion. The music flowed gently, telling a story of love, loss, and hope. The audience listened closely. Some people closed their eyes, letting the music reach their hearts. Others sat very still, surprised by the depth of feeling coming from such a young player. As the song went on, the girl's confidence grew. She played with all her heart, letting the music carry her. The doubts and whispers from earlier were gone. When the last note faded, the room stayed quiet for a moment. Then applause broke out, slow at first, then growing louder. People stood up, clapping and cheering. The girl smiled softly, feeling a warmth inside her chest. She had shared something important, and the crowd had listened. After the performance, many people came to talk to her. Some said they were moved by her music. Others asked how she learned to play so beautifully. Her father hugged her tightly, proud and happy. He knew this was just the beginning of a new chapter. The music festival was more than just a competition. It was a place where the girl found her voice again, where she realized that even in silence, her music could speak louder than words. She left the stage that day not just as a young violinist, but as a storyteller, carrying her mother's song into the world. The moment had arrived. The young violinist stood backstage, the soft glow of the stage lights visible through the curtains. Her heart pounded loudly in her chest. This was the moment she had dreamed about but also feared. She was about to step out in front of hundreds of people, many of whom had already judged her before she played a single note. Her fingers trembled slightly as she held the violin. The instrument felt familiar and comforting, but the stage was vast and the crowd felt enormous. She reminded herself to breathe slowly and steady, just like her father had taught her. From where she stood, she could hear the applause from the last performer wrapping up. People were excited, chatting quietly, and some even laughing among themselves. The girl knew that many were still skeptical about her place in this festival. After all, she was the youngest competitor, and her violin was not one of those expensive, shiny instruments the others carried. Some whispered, "She won't last more than a few notes," or, "Why even bother letting a child perform here?" Despite all this, she had a calm inside her, a quiet strength she had learned from her mother's music. Her mother had taught her that music was about sharing what was inside, not about being the best or winning applause. When the announcer called her name, she took a deep breath and stepped onto the stage. The lights were bright and the crowd's eyes seemed to hold every ounce of doubt and curiosity. She walked to the center and took her place. The hall was silent except for the soft rustling of people settling into their seats. The girl raised her violin to her shoulder, adjusted the chin rest, and held her bow with care. The moment seemed to stretch forever as she prepared to play the first note. The bow touched the strings lightly, producing a soft sound that almost felt like a whisper. The music began slowly, delicate and pure. As she played, her nervousness melted away, replaced by a connection with the melody and the memories it carried. The song was the one her mother had composed but never performed in public. It was a song filled with both sadness and hope, like a conversation between the past and the future. With each note, she poured her heart into the music, letting it tell the story she couldn't put into words. The audience fell silent, listening intently. Some closed their eyes, feeling the emotion in the music. Others sat forward, caught off guard by the depth coming from such a young player. The laughter and doubt that had filled the room earlier were gone. For the first time that day, she felt seen, not just as a child with an old violin, but as an artist with a voice that mattered. The melody moved gently through the hall, flowing like a river. Her fingers moved with grace, guided by years of quiet practice and the memory of her mother's love. She played not for the crowd, but for herself, and the memory she carried with her. When the final note faded into silence, the room stayed still for a heartbeat. Then the applause began, soft at first, then growing louder, spreading like wildfire through the crowd. People stood up, clapping and cheering with a warmth that surprised the girl. She smiled softly, her eyes shining with tears she fought to hold back. The doubts, the whispers, they had all disappeared in those few minutes of music. She had shown everyone something real, something powerful. Backstage, her father waited with open arms. When she came off the stage, he hugged her tightly, whispering, "You did it. You showed them." The judges, who had seemed stern and hard to impress, approached her with kind words and encouragement. They praised her skill and the emotion she brought to the performance. That day, the girl learned something important. It wasn't about being perfect or having the best instrument. It was about honesty, courage, and sharing a piece of yourself with the world. As the festival continued, she felt a new sense of confidence growing inside her. The journey was just beginning, but she knew she could face the challenges ahead with her violin by her side. Music had become her voice, her way to speak when words failed. And in that moment on the stage, she found a new part of herself, a young violinist who had silenced a crowd and touched many hearts. The applause slowly faded, but the feeling it left stayed with the young violinist. It was like a warm light glowing inside her chest. She had not only played the music she loved, but she had also reached the hearts of the people watching. That feeling was something she had never known before. Backstage, the noise of the crowd was replaced by soft footsteps and whispered congratulations. Some of the other musicians, who had seemed distant before, now looked at her with new respect. A few even smiled and nodded as if to say, "You did well." Her father waited nearby, his eyes shining with pride. When she walked toward him, he opened his arms and she stepped into a tight hug. He could feel the tears trying to escape her eyes, but she held them back, smiling softly instead. "Everyone was so quiet," she said softly. "I could feel them listening." Her father nodded. That's because you gave them something real. You played from your heart. The rest of the festival went on, but for the young violinist, everything had changed. She no longer felt like the quiet girl with the old violin. She was a storyteller, someone who could reach people with her music. Over the next days, people came to talk to her. Some were strangers who had only just heard her play, but they shared how moved they were. Others were musicians who had been at the festival for years, offering words of encouragement and advice. One older violinist who had won the festival many times told her, "You have something special. Keep playing like that and you will go far." The girl listened to all of it quietly, feeling a mixture of pride and disbelief. She still remembered the doubt in the eyes of the audience when she first came on stage. And now she was hearing praise and kindness. But she also knew this was just the beginning. The path ahead would not always be easy. There would be more challenges, more moments of doubt. Yet she felt stronger now. After the festival, her father and she sat together in their small living room. The violin rested on the table between them. "You know," her father said, "this music is a way to keep your mother's memory alive. It's a way to carry her with you no matter where you go." She nodded. "I want to keep playing. Not just for the festival, but for me and for her." Her father smiled. "Then we will find ways to make that happen. We'll work together, step by step." The days that followed were full of practice and new lessons. She began to dream bigger, imagining a future where music would be a part of her life in a deeper way. She joined a small music group at school, meeting other children who loved instruments and songs. Sometimes, she would share her mother's composition with them, feeling a connection grow between her past and her present. Yet even with all this new hope, she never forgot the fear she had felt backstage before her performance. The memory reminded her that courage was not about never being scared, but about facing that fear and moving forward anyway. At home, her father saved money to buy her a new violin. It wasn't fancy or expensive, but it was better than the old one she had used for years. The new instrument felt different in her hands, brighter, fuller, but the music still came from the same place inside her. One afternoon, while practicing, she looked out the window and thought about her mother. She felt a gentle warmth like a soft breeze that seemed to say, "Keep going." That feeling gave her strength. Music had become more than notes on a page or sounds in the air. It was her way of speaking without words. It was her way of healing and growing. The festival had shown her that others could hear her story too. It had taught her that even when people doubted her, her music could change their minds and hearts. With each day, she grew more confident and determined to keep playing, to keep sharing her gift with the world. And deep down, she knew her mother was still listening, proud of the young violinist who had found her voice and was ready to sing. The music festival was over, but for the young violinist, a new journey had just begun. The applause she had received still echoed in her heart, reminding her of what she was capable of when she believed in herself. After the festival, her life slowly changed in small, quiet ways. At school, some of her classmates who had never paid much attention now saw her differently. They asked about her music and sometimes even asked to hear her play. It was a new feeling, being noticed not just for being a quiet girl, but for something she loved deeply. At home, the evenings were filled with practice and new lessons. Her father worked hard to support her dreams. He saved enough to buy her better music books and even arranged for a local teacher to help her improve her skills. The teacher was kind and patient, but also pushed her to work harder. Some days were difficult, fingers ached, and the new music was challenging. Yet she remembered her mother's words. Music was about heart and honesty, not just skill. So she kept going. Over time, she began to perform at small events around town. At first, the crowds were small, just a few neighbors or friends, but each performance gave her more confidence. She learned how to stand tall on stage and how to calm the nervous flutter in her stomach. One day, a woman from a music foundation visited her school. She was looking for young talent to support and heard about the girl who had played at the festival. After listening to her play, the woman offered her a scholarship to attend special music classes. It felt like a dream come true. The classes were held in a big music school in the city, where many talented young musicians studied. The girl felt nervous but excited. She knew this was an opportunity to learn more and grow. In the new school, she met children from different places, all with their own stories and dreams. Some were older and more experienced, but she didn't feel small or scared anymore. Instead, she listened carefully, learned eagerly, and shared her own music with them. Her teachers noticed her dedication and unique style. They encouraged her to compose her own pieces and to think about what music meant to her personally. She spent many nights writing new melodies inspired by her life, by the love for her mother, the struggles she had faced, and the hope she carried for the future. Music became her way of expressing feelings she couldn't say aloud. The more she played and composed, the more she realized that music was not just notes on a page. It was a language of the heart, a way to connect with others. Her father continued to support her every step. He was proud but always reminded her to stay humble and kind. Talent is important, he said, but how you use it to touch others is what truly matters. Years passed and the girl grew into a young woman with a deep love for music. She performed at bigger venues and won awards. But what made her happiest was knowing she could make others feel something through her playing. She never forgot the day at the festival when the crowd had doubted her and then fallen silent as she played. That moment had changed her life forever. It taught her that belief in oneself could silence even the loudest doubts. One evening, after a long concert, she sat quietly with her violin in her lap. She thought about the journey, how far she had come, and all the people who had helped her along the way. She smiled, feeling a gentle peace. Music had healed her, had given her a voice, and had connected her to her mother in a way words never could. Her story was no longer just about a young violinist who surprised a crowd. It was about hope, courage, and the power of never giving up on your dreams. And as she lifted her violin once again, ready to play, she knew the music would always guide her, telling the story of a girl who refused to be silenced.